Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Glendale Housing Authority meeting of August 4th, 2009. May we have the roll call, please?
Authority members: Draymond.
Here.
Friedman.
Here.
Mincy.
Here.
Karazian.
Here.
Quintero.
Here.
Weaver. Chairman Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
The agenda for the August 4th, 2009 regular meeting of the Glendale Housing Authority was posted on Thursday, July 30th, 2009 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Thank you. Next item?
Next item is approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
If there are no objections or corrections, the minutes will be approved as submitted. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communications. Are there any cards?
I do have a card.
Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the Housing Authority may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision, and the matter may be referred to staff through the Executive Director for investigation and a report.
I have a card from Herbert Milano.
Chairman Najarian, members of the Housing Authority, my name is Herbert Milano. Last week I've presented to you a copy of the 2001 Youth Strategy Report. I hope that you've had an opportunity to go over that report because it highlights some of the major issues that we had back in the years 2000, 2001. And I got reminded of that issue again yesterday while I was reading the Glendale News Press concerning the killing of two teenagers, 13 and 14-year-olds. At that time, I went to the service for Christopher McCullough at the church on Honolulu. It was packed full of people. My wife and I took our two kids, and I was kind of surprised to find out that in the lobby of the church, there were the pictures of Christopher McCullough's experience with AYSO. The year before, I had been coaching soccer, and both of my kids were playing throughout the city in Region 88. And it turned out that this young boy had been a team player in one of the teams that my son had played against. Looking at the soccer ball and the pictures of this young man and having his life cut short like that really hit me pretty hard. I had brought my kids there as a way of not only paying respect, but also as a way of acknowledging that, it's very easy to fall into a situation where they could be exposed to drugs and have such a terrible death. For a long time, I've had an interest in finding out why it is that we have a lack of sustainability to youth programs. That report from 2001 was asking for $1.7 million on an annual basis so that we could provide the type of synergy among all of the nonprofits and city services to truly provide sustainable services to youth. Since that time, during all these years, my advocacy has been in looking overall at the expenses of the city, the increasing cost of payroll and benefits, amounts that go well over $100 million. And then look back at the efforts that we have actually made or tried to make with regard to this conversation about what are we doing for youth. And that conversation is not in the city council week to week. Months can go by and the concern about youth and youth programs and kids at risk and drugs and so forth is not there. There's always a conversation with regard to the next construction that is going to take place, the next major development, the next issue on the hillsides, the payroll, the urgency ordinances for payroll, the benefits, and so forth. But that conversation, I just don't hear. And I think that is what drives me so much to come in and take a look at how does the city spend the taxpayers' dollars? Why is it so easy for us to spend money at the tail end, and just continue to increase the pay and benefits and expenses having to do with police, but the actual prevention, where the dollars really, really work effectively at preventing many kids from getting into trouble, that conversation I just don't see there. And it is my hope that, that someone within the city council, especially having 3 Democrats on board, you have the sensitivity to say, it is time for us to look at this problem deeply, look at all of the resources that are out there and where these resources are lacking in sustainability. The state of California is cutting funding to more and more of the programs that eventually wind up with servicing the youth. But where do we come in as a city to say we need to sustain programs? We need to provide the supporting environments for all these people that on their own are trying to do something in order to assist themselves, with regard to the issues of youth and drugs and the exposure. These kids were killed, through some of these other individuals who were providing them with drugs and wanted some money, and I think one of them lifted a rock and smashed his head. I could imagine, to have the empathy to imagine your own child die in that way, especially from parents that are truly involved and parents who got their kids involved in AYSO and still wind up with that kind of result in their life. I could not imagine the grief and the pain that this person might still have and those parents have still today. And so why aren't we having that conversation? If I come before you, it's just a reminder that there are bigger social issues with which a city with an $800 million budget can address and say, we can do something about that. And that leadership is the leadership that comes from you. And that's what I was expecting, when I supported, Mayor Quintero when he ran for office, the second time around, and for Mr. Draymond. These were the issues that were behind us, that finally we get people who are truly vested, with regard to the social issues, that we can address these problems and find a solution for them. And it is my hope that we move in that direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is our beeper working? The volume up on that? I didn't hear that. Thank you. I have no other cards. Oral communications is closed. Let's move on to the next item.
On the business agenda at 6A is Acting Director of Community Development and Housing regarding approval of Path Ventures as the new project sponsor of a new 2008 permanent supportive housing for the chronically homeless program. A1 is a motion approving Path Ventures as a new project sponsor.
Thank you. Mr. McFall?
Thank you. We'll have the interim director, Jess Duran, provide a report.
Thank you, Bob. Chairman Najarian and members of the Housing Authority of City of Glendale. The Community Development and Housing Department is requesting the Housing Authority's approval of Path Ventures as the project sponsor for a new permanent supportive housing program for chronically homeless, and authorization for the city manager to enter into operating agreements and execute all necessary documents to effectuate the transfer of the sponsorship of this new program from the City of Glendale to Path Ventures. In October of 2008, the city submitted its annual 2008 Continuum of Care funding application to HUD, which was comprised of 14 projects totaling $2.7 million, including a new 5-unit scattered site program for chronically homeless, with the city as the designated sponsor of that project. The new 5-unit scattered site project was a last-minute substitute for a 10-unit project-based transitional housing program sponsored by the Antelope Valley Domestic Violence Council, who had decided to terminate its agreement with the city and to discontinue that program. The city's Continuum of Care funding application was approved by HUD in March of 2009, including the new 5 units of scattered site units. It was the city's intent all along that once the application was approved by HUD, that we would issue an RFP to identify a qualified, experienced nonprofit sponsor to assume that program from the city. A scattered site program is one that consists of a project sponsor master leasing individual units throughout the city of Glendale and then placing homeless clients in those units. Then the service provider or sponsor provides ongoing intensive case management to those families and links them with all the supportive services they need and performs tenant counseling to keep them in the unit and as good tenants as they interact with the landlords. In response to the RFP that the city issued, only one organization submitted a proposal, and that was Path Ventures. Like Path Achieve Glendale, Path Ventures is a subsidiary of the Path Los Angeles parent corporation. Path Ventures already operates one 8-unit scattered site permanent supportive housing program in Glendale, and they do an effective job with that project. They also operate 81 units of permanent supportive housing in the city of Long Beach. Path Ventures has all of their management and operational systems in place. They are already a partner in Glendale's Homeless Continuum of Care. They will be serving clients that will be going through the Glendale Continuum of Care, beginning with street outreach, the intake and the access center, temporary emergency housing and then placement into these permanent supportive housing units. So they're ready to begin operations as soon as we receive approval from the Housing Authority and then approval of a change in sponsorship with HUD. And we do have a representative here, the Executive Director of Path Ventures, to answer any specific questions regarding their programming.
Questions? Mr. Quintero?
Oh, I have a comment, and then I'm prepared to move 6A1. I think they have done an excellent job from the very beginning when they came into the city and began to run the programs. And they've got an especially active board of directors here. So I think they're the appropriate agency to run the program.
Are you making the motion?
And I'll move 6A1.
second.
Is there any other discussion? I have some questions, just so I'm clear. The Freedom House will now not have a sponsor, and that will cease to exist. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, that was a 10-unit for female domestic violence victims.
Correct.
And that's because the Antelope Valley group that was sponsoring it declined to do so this year.
Correct. Just like the Hamilton Court Program and the YWCA, due to financial hardships, they determined that they could not continue with that program. And it was late in the year when our application to HUD was due, so we had to make a quick substitution in order not to lose that funding and units altogether. And the only new projects that HUD is approving are projects for permanent supportive housing for the chronically homeless. That's HUD's number one priority. Other than that, all of our projects are renewal projects.
The 5 that we're getting that will be administered through PATH, you said are scattered. So there isn't one central facility. They're
Correct.
units rented throughout the city.
Correct.
Landlords are prohibited from discriminating based on income level. I mean, is this a protected class of citizens that a landlord could say, obviously the money will be there and guaranteed, so forth. Can a landlord say, no, I don't want this tenant? Is there a legal? I mean, it's not one of those protected. Did you get the question, Scott?
I'm sorry, I had to take a call.
So we're talking about the type of program that will be administered will be scattered throughout the city, where private units will be rented and administered with a caseworker through PATH. I'm saying PATH Achieva. It's a different version of PATH.
Path Ventures.
It's
PATH Ventures. Can a landlord say, thank you, but no thanks. This is a luxury apartment building, and we don't want this type of tenant in there. So the question is, can a landlord in that circumstance decline to rent because it's not based on race, gender, national origin, et cetera, those protected classes?
The question is whether or not they can discriminate, and I don't use that term in the pejorative sense, but essentially discriminate against individuals who are not part of a suspect class. If they're based at, like Section 8, for example, they can certainly not rent to Section 8. They don't have to be part of the Section 8 program. I'm not aware of anything that would preclude a landlord from indicating that they don't want their unit available for this type of a program. But I can check with Jess. We can look into it in a little more depth, determine how those programs are operated. I'm not familiar with how Path Ventures is intending to operate the program other than as a master lessor.
Mr. Chairman, the lease is actually between Path Ventures, the organization, and the landlords. And so Path has the legal relationship with the landlord, and then they place clients into that unit. So Path is responsible to the landlord for the maintenance of those units and in many ways the behavior of the client. And so if things don't work out, they move that client elsewhere and they put in a new client that maybe is more ready to be in that unit.
And I haven't seen their agreements, but I imagine there'll be some disclosures in those agreements as well. But I'm
I'll speak to that.
Yes, my name is Maria Carr. I represent Path Ventures. I'm the case manager currently administering the 8 units that we do. And so we master lease with owners and then place our clients in the apartments. And if most of the time everything's worked out fine, with the 8 units I have. But if there's a problem with the client, we advocate we're kind of the mediator between the owner and the client and try to work things out in between the two. So did I answer, what was your question?
Well, I guess the question, and maybe I'm misinterpreting it a little bit differently, is whether or not you've had landlords that have refused or declined to be part of the program.
We have, at the beginning when I was starting to, in the past, with the previous program, trying to find owners who would work with our program, there were definitely owners who didn't want to master lease to our agency. And as far as I know, they're allowed to not, just like they're allowed to not rent Section 8, they're allowed to not want to lease to our agency. So kind of the selling point is we're trying to get them to lease to our agency, and then we choose our tenants and then place them into their units. And even if the tenant is exited from the program or they move on to another housing situation, we still hold the unit and screen again for new participants and then place them in the unit. So that's how this program has worked.
One question are any of your units involved with domestic violence?
Of any of the current unit or any of the
Or the ones that'll be, it's chronic homelessness.
confidential? They could possibly, yes. I mean, it's potential.
Right now, we're losing that, aren't we? Aren't we losing a lot of hope we had for the domestic violence?
Well, we're losing 10,
Yeah.
but not through anyone else's fault. I mean, it's just
Well, that's true.
just the way it happened. So I guess she's saying that you could possibly be homeless and a victim of domestic violence, which certainly you'd be entitled to partake of the program. Are we doing anything to replace those domestic violence units? Because I think that's pretty important. I know.
Yes. Chairman,
Not specifically on the agenda, but will you be coming back, or will we be trying to get other funding for such programs?
Chairman Najarian, if you recall the Hamilton Court project, when you approved the change in sponsorship for Hamilton Court, we did build into the agreement that at all times at least 25% of their clients would be victims of domestic violence, which is in excess of the proportion of the homeless population in Glendale that are victims of domestic violence. Based on our 2009 count, 10% of our population would be families that are victims of domestic violence. And the other thing about the project-based projects that are targeted only for victims of domestic violence, they are registered with a county-wide regional system. So most of the clients that end up in Glendale's units are actually from out of the area, because that's the way the system works. This way, we're able to better target and give preference to Glendale residents. And just by the nature of the homeless population, we will be serving families who were victims of domestic violence at one point or another in their journey.
Any other questions? I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Authorities Draymond.
Yes.
Authority members Freeman.
Yes.
Mincy.
Yes.
Brazian.
Yes.
Montero.
Yes.
Weaver. Chairman Najarian.
Yes. Next item.
Is there any staff comments or authority member comments?
Comments from
Yes.
authority members or staff, Mr. Duran.
Yes, Chairman Najarian, we do have another very important positive announcement to make about another one of our affordable housing projects that's coming online, for which we are beginning to accept applications this month. So at this time, I'm going to ask Sona Maradian to give you an explanation of what that is.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Housing Authority members. I'm here to announce the information on marketing and lottery selection process for Glendale City Lights. Advanced Development Investment, ADI, the developer, and is in partnership with the Housing Authority of Glendale, is currently accepting application for Glendale City Lights project. Applications will be available beginning today through Friday, September 4th. Glendale City Lights is a 68-unit new development affordable rental housing project, which consists of 2 and 3 bedrooms. 1 unit will be reserved for an on-site manager. To pre-qualify, applicants must meet the income and household composition requirements. Per the approved affirmative fair housing marketing plan, marketing and application distribution for Glendale City Lights will be for a 31-day period, beginning August 4th, which is today, until September 4th. Applications must be postmarked no later than September 4th to be accepted. Marketing materials will be in 4 languages: English, Armenian, Spanish, and in Korean. I have also provided you a copy of the flyer, which you can see. Flyers for the Glendale City Lights project were also mailed to housing or households in the City of Glendale Section 8 waiting list, identified as having 3 or more persons in their household. Flyers and application packages were mailed to Glendale libraries, schools, Glendale churches, and places of worship, as well as social service agencies. Applications can be picked up and are available during normal business hours from the City of Glendale Community Development and Housing offices located at 141 North Glendale Avenue, as well as 2 satellite offices: Armenian Relief Society located at 517 West Glen Oaks Boulevard, and Catholic Charities located at 4322 San Fernando Road. Applications will be available to download and print from the city website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. And also, applications can be received by mail just by calling 818-759-6478. Due to the high demand for the projects, a lottery drawing will be conducted to determine the priority order in which households may have the opportunity to be offered a unit and reside at Glendale City Lights. Thank you, and I'm available for questions if you have any.
Thank you. We love to see you every so often. It means we're getting more units online, and we're all aware of the high demand for such units. Mr. Minson.
Is that going to be online, that information?
Yes, if you Google City of Glendale homepage, you'll see a link that would lead up to the application, the flyers, the information sheets for this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Okay, if not,
We adjourn?
is there a second?
Second.
The Housing Authority is adjourned.